Going to talk about the hope in the face of tragedy. But before we start, do we have any prayer requests that we need? I know of Ginger Slack. She's in the hospital. She will be there tonight, maybe even tomorrow, but they are doing some tests on her, trying to figure out just exactly what's causing some of her stomach issues and all that. No visitors, she requests, but certainly keep her in your prayers. Is there anyone else that? I'm sorry? Chuck Van Orman, he came home from his surgery. He was actually out in his workshop this afternoon, so if he's good enough to get up and go out there, you know he's feeling better, but keep him in your prayer. And that's who? Okay, now he needs surgery. Okay. I have hearing aids. I have turned them way up, and I hope that'll help. And but if I start walking towards you, don't feel threatened. I just got to hear what you're saying. We're going to ask Jerry to lead us in the opening prayer.
Our God and our Father in heaven, come to you, bowing and praying in this day, and always with praise and with thanksgiving in heart. We're so thankful that we can work at the job and a true God, God who never changes. Father, this life is always the same. Father, we thank you for the blessings that you show upon us each and every day. Bless us in so many ways, Father, in ways we're not even aware of. But we truly can give you praise, truly, and honor for us, Father. We thank you for our health and our well-being. You have given us, Father, that we have this time to come together to worship you, to study from your word, for his grace that the Brother Jennings, Father, his knowledge of the word, for his ability to teach us, Father. And I just pray that we'll have a ready remembrance of those things that he has studied, things that put together, Father. He shares them with us, and we'll have open hearts and minds as we hear. We'll take those things that we learn, Father, tonight, and we'll strive to apply them to our lives. We may be better servants to you. Father, we're mindful of those who were mentioned here this evening who their health may be giving them issues, Father. We know there are those in the hospitals. We know there are those who are going through surgery. We just ask, Father, that you will be with them. We know they're your children, Father, and we pray for them. We sometimes don't remember all the names that we trust, Father, but you know each one of them individually. You know their needs, Father, and we ask that you be with them, strengthen them, encourage them, Father. Help us to always remember them in our prayers, that they'll have a full and successful recovery, Father. Pray that you will be with the caretakers, that they take care of them, Father, and with the doctors and nurses who have ministered to them. We ask to be with those that they'll use those needs and technology to those, Father, to help restore them to their health. We're always mindful of those who may be in the nursing homes, those who can't get out, Father, due to health reasons, who would love to be with us. We pray for their strength. We pray, Father, that each and every day we pray for them. They'll not become discouraged, Father, in the conditions in which they find themselves, but they will remain strong and faithful in you, Lord. Thank you again for allowing us to be here at this time, study, to acknowledge you as our God. Forgive us, Father, when we fall short of you, and put the rest of us useful unto you and to your service. Mind the way serve of you. All these things are so great.
Amen. Whoever put this whole series together certainly had a lot of different areas and ways that we could go with the different subjects. They gave us kind of a little bit of an outline that we could follow and give us some suggestions on what maybe we could talk about. But they basically just left it up to the teachers. And the reason I picked this particular one about hope in the face of tragedy is more on a personal basis. And I'll get into that as we get forward. But there's all kind of tragedies in our lives, guys. There's national tragedies. One of the things that they're suggesting here is think about Pearl Harbor. Now, there's maybe not a lot of folks in here that experienced that personally, but they certainly have family members. My dad was in the Army, and he was in the European theater. And so I don't know that he was ever in that area. But again, Pearl Harbor affected this nation, and there was a lot of things that happened because of that. But the one that I'm sure most everybody in here will know about is 9/11. That's my birthday. And now we've got the situation of 9/11 and what happened on that day. and the tragedy that befell this nation, and it was amazing some of the things that happened. The morning of September the 11th, 2001, it was another such day. I'm sure you can remember where you were, what you were doing when you learned of the terrible tragedy of that day. The look on faces of people in New York were similar in appearance, shock and fear, and the news was broadcast across this country, around the world. A sense of utter hopelessness and gripped this many people in this nation. I can remember exactly where I was at when that happened. I was at work. My boss called me and told me to put it on the intercom on the radio so people could keep up with it. I can remember watching a sports, Tony Kornheiser was doing ESPN Sports, and they actually, he made the decision for the whole network, listen, we're not talking about sports, and they switched that channel to a news channel so you can keep up with it. I can remember going down to the blood bank to give blood, and guys, you couldn't get within a half a mile of that place of the people that were lined up in there trying to help and try to do whatever they could do. So there's a lot of different things that you could go with that. But in the Bible, and some of the things we're going to deal about is Job and what he dealt with for just a second. Job 14:1 states, "Man that is born of woman is of few days and full of trouble." What do you think? Is he being over dramatic? Is he trying to say something that maybe is not true? But what would you think Job's thought process was after the tragedy that he faced of losing his family, losing everything pretty much he had? And that was the statement that he made. If you look in the eyes of a mother whose child was abducted, you hear it in the voice of a father of 3 whose wife was killed in a drunk driver. See it in the downcast walk of a man who has lost his job due to the corporate takeover or plant closure. Sit beside the one who just got horrible news from their oncologist. Hide in the trembling hands of one whose loved one is suffering from Alzheimer's. That brings it home. That brings it home personally to you. That helps you maybe come to grasp of things that maybe you haven't never even thought about. But it's absolutely important that we understand exactly what the Lord's trying to teach us in some of the verses and some of the scriptures that he's trying to help us in when we face these kind of things. In Job's statement about man is born of woman in few days and full of trouble, what they're talking about here is the brevity of life. Life is depicted as fleeting, often compared to a fading flower or a shadow. The universal human condition, the phrase born of woman, emphasizes the shared natural limitations of humanity. The problem of suffering. Job is in deep affliction, observing that trouble is standard part of human experience on earth. And in this chapter, Job is addressing the frailty of human and expressing his despair over the finality of death in contrast of God's pause. In Matthew 11:28, "Come to me, all you are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your soul. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." In Hebrews 13:5 and verse 6, "Keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have, because God has said, 'Never will I leave you, never will I forsake you.' So we say with confidence, 'The Lord is my helper. I will not be afraid. What can mere mortals do to me?'" In Proverbs 14:32, "When calamity comes, the wicked are brought down, but even in death, the righteous seek the refuge of God. Very truly I tell you, whoever obeys my word will never see death." It's okay to grieve. Death is an enemy and is right to feel pain. God encouraged us to mourn because it is the path to receiving his comfort Jesus understood our past. In John 11, when Jesus saw Mary and Martha grieving, he wept. He does not demand that we tough it out. He stands with us in our sadness. We do not grieve without hope. Paul tells us not to grieve as those who have no hope. 1 Thessalonians 4:13. Our hope is that the death is not the end, because Christ arose and we have the promise of future resurrection. And God heals over time. Grief is a wave that can feel overwhelming, but God is the one who heals us over time, turning the mourning and lasting memory into that no longer destroys us. A lot of people in here know my story, and this is really the first time we really tried to talk about it. It's been 4 years, and so that's what I'm going to try to talk about tonight and spend some time on it. Steve Hill kind of inspired me to face this. When he made his talk, he talked a lot about his personal struggles with his health and some of the things that he had to come with. And I thought, well, maybe that's something that will help me in my understanding of the tragedy of Linda's death. March 4th, 2022, we were married 55 years. March 31st, she died of liver cancer. 11 years earlier, we went to an eye doctor to have cataract surgery. Very successful, no issues. 1 year later, we went back to the eye doctor to have a checkup, and they found a tumor wrapped around her optical nerve. Surgery was the only option for that treatment. Dr. Murray in Miami was chosen to perform the treatment. Fast forward now 10 years from that start of that treatment in Miami. We went 3 to 4 times a year to control the bleeding that was in her eye, so she would not lose her vision in that eye. At that time, it was discovered that a melanoma had moved from her optical nerve to her liver, and she would need treatment from a cancer doctor. Dr. Murray told us that after 10 years of treatment, that the chances of that happening was like her being struck by lightning and winning the lottery on the same day. So they had went through DNA testing. They told her when this first started that there is a possibility. If you Google a melanoma, it'll tell you the first place it goes to is the liver. But she went 10 years being checked and checked and checked and rechecked and never had an issue until that appointment. We got an appointment at Shands Hospital in Gainesville, and they started a clinical trial. They told us there was no cure for this cancer, and she probably had 2 years left to live, and that was in 2020. Linda died March 31st, 2022, and her funeral service was held here on April the 9th, and she was taken to Highland Memorial Park. The title of this lesson was Hope in the Face of Tragedy. How do you deal with grief that overcomes you? You're not even sure how to move on with your life and understand the effect of losing your spouse. Brothers and sisters, we do not want you to be uninformed about those who sleep in death, so that you not grieve like the rest of mankind who have no hope. For we believe that Jesus died and rose again, and so we believe that God was to bring with Jesus those who had fallen asleep in him. According to the Lord's word, we tell you that we who are still alive, who are left until the coming of the Lord, will certainly not precede those who have fallen asleep. For the Lord himself will come down from heaven with a loud command, and the voice of an archangel, and the trumpet to call of God, and the death of Christ, and rise first after that. We are still alive, and our left will be caught up together with them in the cloud to meet the Lord in the air. So we'll be the Lord forever. Therefore, encourage one another with these words. I cannot even begin to tell you the number of people that reached out to me and my family to try to help us get past this situation and deal with it. It is so hard to understand how people feel if you haven't had that happen to you. I've always felt like that I was a pretty sensitive, caring, kind person. There'd be some people that work for me that wouldn't agree with that statement, but I never understood the grief that happens to you when you lose a person, your spouse, that you had been living with and married to for 55 years. A couple of weeks after Linda died, I received this card. May God, who understands each need, who listens to every prayer, bless you and keep you in his tender, loving care. You're in my thoughts. You're in my heart. There are no words that can make this any better. Sorry doesn't begin to cover it. You've lost Linda, your best friend, the love of your life. It's a part of you. And now everyone has gone on to home to continue on with their lives. And it's you alone to try to pick up the pieces and go on. My heart hurts for you. Please know that I'm here for you. And with God and your family and friends, you will make your way through. Love, Susan. That was the first card that I had ever gotten from her. Now, every holiday, every special day, a whole lot of days, and many in this room can tell you the same thing. This is a really nice card that she will send you with a whole lot of care and a whole lot of thought. And she asked me if I would like some information on grief. And I told her, yeah, I think I would. C.W. died 6 years, been dead now 6 years. And Gary and Sue, very, very close to them and very close friends. Gary told Susan one time, he says, I don't know how to talk to you about this. I don't know what I can say or what I shouldn't say. And so Susan asked him if he would like some of the stuff that she has on grief. And he said, yeah. And so she started sending him some of that stuff. It's so hard, folks, when people, you know they love you and you know that they care about you, and they try to say some kind things, but what happens a lot of times in that is they'll say something like, I know how you feel. I'm not sure you do. If you haven't lived what I've lived and done what I've done and experienced what I've experienced, you may have a similar situation, and it certainly would be that way. In that way, if you had lost a spouse and you understood the pain and suffering that comes with that and some of the things that you have to deal with. I want to drop back real quick, because basically I forgot it, and talk a little bit more about 9/11 in the sense that Susan told me about her son Chad, and he was in New York City when that happened. So I want to read you what she wrote me about that. Chad flew out of Atlanta to New York. He worked for a lighting company, and this was to be just a day trip. Fly up in the morning, go to the store, and then the warehouse, and then fly home that evening. When he walked out of the airport, he got a taxi and headed to the store. For some reason, while they were headed into town, Chad changed his mind. He asked the driver to change, and they headed to the warehouse first. While on the way, the taxi driver received a call that he should turn on his TV in the cab. They watched a plane crash into the building and found out that it was the second plane to crash. Chad could see the smoke and the flames from the cab. Listening to the TV, Chad knew the airport was closed. So he had the driver take him across town and let him out. Chad then walked around until he found a room at the hotel, the last room. Then he found out one of the buildings that was hit was the one where the store was that he would have been in. If he hadn't changed his mind to go there first, that would have probably been something that would have been a hard situation. By this time, Chad had called his wife and filled her in and had called me at work. I called CW and told him to find a TV. He called me soon after that and said, Chad, your father-in-law and a friend of Chad was coming to CW's office around 12:30, pick him up, and the three of them were going to drive to New York and bring Chad home. They arrived in the wee hours of the morning, and several miles out, they were stopped by a member of the militia, or military. CW explained what they were doing, just going in and pick up his son and and head back home. He let them through, but he told them they probably would be stopped again and that the guards might not let them go in there any further. When they arrived at the next checkpoint, CW again explained what they were doing. The guard listened, and he said they were not to let anybody in, but he was going to make an exception with CW. He said if that was my son in there, he would have done the same thing. The guard told him, he gave him a time limit. They had to report back to him. They drove in, found the hotel. CW knocked on the door. Chad opened it up. When he saw his dad, he fell into CW's arms, hugging him, so tight and crying. From his hotel room, they could see the towers and the flames, the smoke, and people jumping out of the windows. And the sirens were nonstop. They drove straight home and arrived the next day on Wednesday, right after we got home from Bible study. So that's how close one of her sons, her son Chad, came to being a whole lot closer to that, and it could have been a whole lot worse. I keep looking down. If you've got a comment or you've got something to say, do you remember I'm sure you remember where you were at on that day when 9/11 hit, what you were doing, and so I don't know how you would not know that. When CW passed away, Susan started a book to help her understand the grief that comes with losing a spouse. On August of 2021, they say things happen for a reason, and I'm beginning to believe it. Since CW died, my feelings have been all over the chart. Guilt, fear, anger, loneliness, sadness, and so many more. I always felt like I was going crazy, saying weird things and thinking and feeling things I could never explain or put into words. After all, CW has been gone 17 months. Shouldn't I be over it and happier? But I've told some of my friends, this year is so much harder than the last year. When CW died so unexpectedly, I was in shock, numb, total denial. This healthy, outgoing, loving man that was so full of life was gone before my eyes. In a matter of seconds, my head and certainly my heart would not accept it. And then COVID hit, and everyone's world was turned upside down, almost a total shutdown. It's like we had lost a year of our life. So this year was the numbness and fading away, and I could feel the pain. And although I'm still shocked, reality is hitting me in the face. So this year, unbelievably hard. Sometimes the pain is excruciating. And all of a sudden this month, I've been getting posts on Facebook about loss and grief. I thought it was coincident that it started on August, since this is the month 45 years ago that we lost our daughter. just a couple of months before she was due. I always think of how in some years I can sort of glide through August without anyone knowing I'm hurting, except CW. He always knew. But since CW has died, it is bringing it up all back again like it just happened. But these posts on Facebook has helped me through some of my darkest times and made me feel like my thoughts and feelings are valid. If I'm seeing these in print, I'm not the only one feeling like this, right? So I decided to start writing down these quotes and sayings, short of the journal, so when I feel I need them, they are there for me. And I will probably write down my own thoughts sometimes. I realize one day when I'm gone, Chad or someone will find my journals. I hope they will read them. It will keep them to understand what I'm going through and maybe keep them when they have suffered a devastating loss. Since this will be fulfilled mostly, excuse me. Oh, I thought that was mine. Since this will be filled mostly with posts from Facebook, I'm going to color code it so my personal thoughts will stand out from the posts, and all of the Facebook posts of the things I read will be written in black ink. So it'll be down to my own thoughts in different colors, whatever I happens to have handy. One thing I know for certain, grief is personal and everyone has to find their own way through it. This is going to be my way. One of the reasons I read that was it kind of sets the stage for how she dealt with this grief in her life. And so she asked me if I would be interested in maybe some of those and when it would help me. And I said, sure, I'd be glad to. And she would give me a pack. We'd see each other at church or whatever, and she'd give me a pack, and I would take that home and I would read it. And I decided that I was going to keep those so that they would help me. And this is the book. This is the very first post that she put in there. No people grieve the same way. And what people need to understand is no amount of time is going to change what we feel. Our loss will be our loss forever. Grieving never stops. Yes, in times we may not express our feelings outwardly as much, but we will still continue to grieve for our loved ones. Until you are there personally, you will never understand it. So please try to be patient and accept us as we are. Could you come back and stay a while? I want to hear your voice and see your smile. I want to hold you tight and never let go. I want to tell you how much I love you. Susan has started what I call it a small group. It would certainly be that, of ladies, widows in this church. And they meet occasionally. It's not a regular scheduled thing. It's not something that they plan too far ahead with. It's just a matter of how the feeling of the group is, and the people that are in that group express to her that they may be ready for another get-together. And then when they come together and talk about the situation that they're in, that helps them to understand maybe better how to deal with that. And she'll certainly use the books that she has and things. Jody and Melissa have reached out to Susan that they could get some of that material because of what they deal with sometimes with people outside the church, in the church, whatever, but people that they're trying to help. And so with that in mind. One of the things I wanted to try to accomplish here tonight is to let you know about that, and let you know that it is not something that's just exclusively for that particular group. There's folks in here that have lost a child. There's folks in here that's lost a dear friend. There's folks in here that have had tragedy in their life. And a lot of times, guys, we feel like we're alone. We feel like there's nobody that really understands it. And it helps to know that other people have done that, other people have experienced that, and other people would be more than willing to help them to understand and help any way that they could. There's a dear sister here that talked to Susan, and she gave her some advice. Grief comes from a tragedy. It's so hard. There's nothing easy about it. When C.W. died, one of our dear sisters hugged her and said, "It never gets easier. It just gets more gentle." Susan said that is the best advice that she had received. And today marks 13 years ago that our sweet sister lost her husband. We pray how her days have been more gentle. You're not alone in it. You're not out there by yourself. And there's certainly many, many opportunities for us to be helpful. Certainly many, many ways that will help us get through some of the tragedy that we have looked into our lives, and not to give up hope.
Part of the hope we're talking about tonight, it's hard sometimes for us that are going through things like this, because we study the Bible, and I even had someone say to me, if you love Christ, you love God like you should, you wouldn't be feeling sick, because you have the hope of heaven. That hurts a lot, because just because I do believe in God, and my hope is that one day I will be in heaven. It doesn't erase the hurt that you had by losing someone that's so close to you, and that's another one of those things, because people mean well when they talk to you. You watch TV, a woman's husband dies, she immediately starts wearing black. She wears it for a year. When that day's over, she takes the black off and she cries. That's not life, and that's not true. And so we have to watch I still find myself watching what I say to people, even though I've been through it. I still have to watch it so hard to not say, but you know what you do. They're not going to call you to say something. That's too much of a big deal. So we have the hope that we're going to be in touch with it, but it still hurts.
I found this in studying for this. Bereavement is a period of mourning and profound grief following the death of a loved one, often accompanied by an intense physical and emotional symptoms like shock and sadness and anger. It is a highly individual process with no set timeline, involving stages such as denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Coping involves self-care, seeking support, and allowing time to process emotions. Key aspects of bereavement. The definition of Merriam-Webster's is defined as a state of being deprived of someone or something, usually through death. It is the objective fact of the loss, while grief is emotional response to it. Primary cause is the death of a partner, family member, or friend. It can also be triggered by other significant losses, such as the end of a relationship or the loss of a home. The symptoms. Common reaction includes shock, numbness, deep sadness, anger towards the deceased. That was hard to read. I'm never sure that I felt that, for sure. I can remember a silly movie one time that the husband died and he came back as a ghost, and the woman could see him. And she told him in one of the scenes was that she was mad at him. He said, "Well, why are you mad at me?" He said, "Because you died. That's why I was mad at you." Guilt and physical symptoms like exhaustion, nausea or insomnia. The types of grief were anticipatory grief occur before death, common in cases of terminal illness. You know it's coming. When Susan and I were dating, and we decided that we were going to get married, she was concerned that we hadn't been dating that long. And one of the things that I told her is that we knew Linda was going to die for 2 years. And we had that time I had that time with Linda. We looked for all the clinical trials that we could find. We tried every single thing that we could think of to see if there was going to be any kind of a breakthrough. I remember the last time that we went to Tampa to Mayo Clinic, there was a new clinical trial that had been approved out of Australia. And the doctor here in Ocala that was treating Linda told her that they had been some success with that, and he was really looking forward to her being able to qualify for that treatment. So when we went down there to find out just exactly what it was all about, and they did their test and determined that no, she wasn't a candidate. And so they told us to call hospice. That's a hard call, guys. That's a hard thing to hear, and a hard thing to tell your kids that you needed to call hospice, because that was about the only thing that was left for you to do. It's complicated, prolonged grief with intense grief, does not listen over time and interferes with daily life. Disenfranchised grief that is not openly acknowledged or socially supported. Stages of grief are not linear. They widely recognized stages include denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And how to cope with grief. Allow feelings. Acknowledge the pain rather than avoiding it. Seek support. Utilize support groups, friends, family, or professional counseling. Self-care. Focus on basic needs, eating, sleeping, and getting fresh air. And be patient. There's no right way to grieve or set a timeline. After I told Jody that I would teach this lesson, talk about this lesson, I was pretty much the first one on the list. And this is lesson number 7. So the ones that are coming up, and I'm sorry I don't know who the teachers are, but next week we're going to talk about when hope is gone, and then false hopes, hope that does not disappoint, suffering in hope, the message of hope, and the hope of glory. I thank you for listening. I wasn't sure about how long this would take me. I'm really concerned about being able to get through some of it, and it has been 4 years, but it does seem like just yesterday sometime. And if you're dealing with that, reach out for help. If you're suffering with some of those feelings and you don't know what to do and you don't know where to go or who to talk to, there are resources out there. There's just an unbelievable amount of material that's about it. I didn't scratch to scratch about that. Some of the things that Susan writes in the book is the things that you're feeling. Yeah, that's okay. You may feel this particular way and you think that's crazy, but no, that's grief. And that's what you have to deal with. I want to call out one other person in here, and Steve back there looking at me. Steve worked for a plumbing company that I called one night because I had some serious plumbing problems and couldn't wait till the next morning, and he showed up. I didn't know Steve. Steve did not attend here. He actually went to Mary Camp. I didn't know that that's where he went. And then talking to Steve, I told him that what was going on. And we stood out in our front yard, and Steve said a prayer for Linda. And I really, really thanked him for that. It was several weeks later actually several months later that I bumped into Steve at a tire shop. And his first question was, how was Linda? You know, of course she had passed, but again, you gotta have your antenna up. You've gotta look for help. If you don't, I'm just firmly convinced it will destroy you, and you're not gonna be able to move on. I can't believe it's been 4 years since she passed away. One of the things that really is a struggle is Tessa. Linda would have been a great grandmother. I kid Susan all the time that she don't walk by much she doesn't buy, but I'm telling you, if Linda was, I'd had to go back to work, because there would have been a whole lot of opportunity. I'm done. I appreciate. There's any comments that you would like to make? Anything that we would like to lay a personal thing? Denny?
You made a comment a little while ago that people say, they know what you're going through, you're able to consult it. This is the many years in my ministry I've done this matter many, many times. What I learned in studying was one of the best things you can say in this situation is not hand on the shoulder or hug. That's the thing. Don't feel as though you've got to tell them you know what you're doing.
Exactly. Barry?
I have a talk with them. Okay. After 3 hours, we're good.
Well, we're all guilty of that, that's for sure. Well, at this time, Jody would say you can pass out. Thank you very much for listening to me.